Hello, and welcome to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, the show that bridges all things mystical with the chaotic and unpredictable experience of being authentically human. I'm your host, Jessie Herman, life coach, energy healer, artist, mother, and channel for the non-physical entity group Vagrein. In other words, I'm some kind of mystic, and so are you. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Candace Blair. After 2 decades as a finance executive on the trading floors in Zurich and London, Candace returned home to America in 2017 with a mission to share the transformative powers of holistic practices. Candace is a certified CRI Kundalini Yoga instructor. She is also a cacaoista, having trained in Ibiza, Spain, and London, and furthered her shamanic studies in Sedona. Additionally, Candace holds certification in shamanic Reiki, levels 1 and 2, and is trained sound healer using ancient gongs and crystal singing bowls. Her expertise extends to the alchemy of becoming methodology, helping clients raise consciousness by releasing trapped emotions from the body, aura, and energetic systems. As the founder of Soulfire Social, Candace provides a platform to share these ancient techniques and build a community of like-minded individuals. Through her journey, these practices have not only transformed her life, but have also allowed her to find purpose and passion, opening her heart to more love and elevating her mind, body, and spirit. Today, she is here to share these inspiring healing modalities that have played a pivotal role in her personal transformation. So, without further ado, let's dive into the world of Kundalini Yoga, meditation, sound healing, the alchemy of becoming, and secret cacao ceremonies with the incredible Candace Blair. Welcome to the podcast. Okay, so welcome, Candace, to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. How are you today?
I'm so good, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast. I look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. I looked a bit into your story, and the thing that fascinated me the most was, well, not the most, because there's so much that's fascinating in it, but you used to be an investment banker in Europe, and you transformed your whole life, made all these really, what could be seen as radical changes to become a yogi. So, you mentioned something along the lines of the broker who bought a turban, so what happened? What was the catalyst that brought you to your transformation? Can you tell us a little bit about life before your transformation and what you're doing now, and just really bring us up to speed with, whoa, how did that all happen?
Dad still asks me that question. and a lot of the broker who bought a turban is a bit my tagline, because it is such a dramatic shift. From walking in with a pinstripe suit, and I was, deputy head of a trading floor, into, walking into a new life in white clothes with a turban on, carrying a gong. It has certainly been a dramatic transformation, but it did evolve over time. And I was brought up in a pretty conservative household, very like Southern, a lot of military, and my family moved around a lot. And so I was not really exposed at all. I mean, to a spiritual side, yes, but more of like a organized religion type of spirituality. And I had always had the desire to travel. It was just always like that. Some people are just born with that bee in their bonnet, that I want to see what's on the other side, and not just what was on the other side of the fence, but also like understanding other religions and what was happening in the world. And so we moved around a lot, but I knew I really wanted to go traveling for a while. So I took a year and a half off after I'd worked for a couple of years, and I ended up in Europe. And I had studied, I ended up, my first job was in investment banking, but I thought, oh, I'm not going to do this. When you're traveling, I thought, I'll be a dive master. That's a great job. I'll just teach people to scuba dive in really beautiful places. But I was offered a job in Switzerland. And to be honest with you, a lot of people ask me, did you burn out from this? It's so high stress. To be honest with you, it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever done. When I first got into it, there's nothing like the stock market to keep you completely and utterly intrigued. Everything is different on a day-to-day basis. I was working with absolutely brilliant people, and I got very lucky that I had an amazing team. And I will tell you, down the road, they actually bought me my first gong as my going away present. So I had an awesome, they let me chant in the boardroom. But yeah, so I ended up having this career. I was in Zurich for 12 years. I was in London for almost 6 years. And it was kind of like, oh, she's living the dream, right? It was like, okay, I was monetarily successful. I had a fantastic group of friends. I have a really beautiful relationship with my family. But I would say I always knew that there was something missing, and that became like a little bit of louder and louder hearing. And at the same time, I started to really suffer from back pain that literally like no Western medicine was solving. And so, as I now know, I didn't know then, my body was speaking to me. I wasn't living a very healthy lifestyle, I have to say. I was certainly not in the yogi health when I was working as a stockbroker, you can imagine. And so I had this kind of debilitating back pain, and I was searching for something. And one day I kind of broke down on the trading floor. I was just in so much pain, I needed to find an alternative. And I was about 38 then. I'm turning 51 next week. So it kind of gives you a time frame. I think a lot of people had some awakenings in 2012, and that was certainly when mine was. And I was like, I'm going to go see this. I'll go see this healer. Someone recommended you need to see an alternative healer. And I'll say his name, Sam Kankanamage. He is so wonderful. He is Sri Lankan, and he has a beautiful center in London in Sri Lanka. And he does amazing work with energy and for backs, etc. And he met me, Jesse, and he like was doing all this stuff. And you have to remember at this point, like, I don't know what a chakra is. I don't know I'm like, what is he talking about? And he's doing all these things, and he looks up at me at the end, and he's like, there's nothing wrong with your back. He goes, your energy is all over the place. He's like, the habits of your unhealthy lifestyle. Like at that point I was smoking, and he's like, you haven't taken a breath deeper than here maybe in your whole life. And he's like, you have to go, I want you to go to yoga, to Kundalini Yoga especially. And I have to tell you, I didn't like yoga. Like at that point, I was like, if I'm not running and like, I'm like, this is so not my thing. Oh, you want me to be quiet and stretch? I just didn't get it. And I needed Kundalini because I walked into the room, and I went because I really had to go. Like it was like, something has to change. And I knew that calling. And I walked into this class, and the woman's all in white and everyone's all in white. And, first Kundalini can be like, this is a little culty, because you're like, well, everyone's sitting on a sheepskin. This is a little strange. And I went though, and the breath, it brought me to myself. The movements were things I'd never done. And because you do it with your eyes closed, right? You're not competing with anyone. Like, so it took me totally out of this competitive environment and mindset. It was like, oh, I'm going to tune into my body. And then when she played the gong, I might have been the first time in 40 years that my mind actually went quiet. The gong has that ability to take you from beta to theta and your thinking mind in 30 to 60 seconds. And it worked for me. And I was just uplifted. And then we chanted, and that's kind of the flow of a Kundalini class. And then we're chanting these words. And I had that moment, that cracking open. I walked out of that class into the streets in London, and I was like, okay, that this is my connection to God. Like I've rediscovered my connection to the divine, and it was glorious. Now, this did not, that was like 5 years before I changed my job, but it opened this whole new experience. And it was so clearly something that I was seeking I was seeking it in my heart, and I didn't really even know, what I was looking for. And over the course of the coming months, slowly I started to notice how it was affecting my life positively. And it opened the door to sound healing journeys. And I met my shaman, who I did my cacao training with eventually. I had my first cacao ceremony and heart opening experience. So over the course of the next kind of 6 months to a year, a whole new world opened up to me that I had no idea existed. And I will credit Sam. He looked at me a year later and he goes, well, I think you better start your Kundalini training. And I was like, I work 50, 60 hours a week. He's like, you'll find a way. And he had me teaching 6 months later. So, that was how it started.
That's amazing. So, in your case, what you were looking for was simply, an escape or relief from this back pain. And instead you found yourself, essentially. From what you've just showed us and told us in this experience. So, it's amazing when you think to how intelligence your body was to give you that pain in the first place. Because without that, it would have never brought you to the breaking point of going, I need to find something different, something else, something new. So anyone who's listening, I'd like to encourage you, if you're going through something and you're like, this is a useless experience, it's only negative, etc., keep your antlers, your antenna, open, because there's a good chance there's some wisdom that's trying to come through that just might need to whisper a little bit louder, like in the case of your experience here. And you did mention, go ahead, yeah.
I was just going to say, and it, like listening to the body, but also taking the negative experiences. I don't know about you, but I find like anytime I've gone through my most traumatic experiences, they have been the pivot point. So it's when we really are feeling it, body, mind, those tend to be, while they're so hard to go through, they tend to be the points where you make the changes and you're being pushed to make decisions. And, thank goodness for them. Some people learn a lot easier than me. I know that, and even I will tell you, 10 years later, as I'm on this path, even my teachers are like, do you think you'll ever do it gracefully? And I'm like, no, I need I need a lot of direction.
You sound just like me. I've got to make all the mistakes to decide what's the best way to do it, the right way. And I have to experience it all. It's just part of the agreement I have with myself, I guess, You did mention, so you mentioned the gong, which was extremely transformative for you. You mentioned the cacao, and you mentioned the Kundalini. So for anyone who's listening right now who doesn't really know about these modalities yet, let's start with Kundalini, for example, because that seems to be sort of where your initiation began, and the combination of those aspects, So what is Kundalini Yoga, and in the way that you would describe it to someone who didn't know?
So, and it's so funny because Kundalini Yoga is not, it's much bigger in like large cities, and it's much bigger in Europe than it is in America. When I came home to the States in 2017, I was so surprised because it was all vinyasa, right? So, and I love, a vinyasa practice is beautiful, but it was so focused on the physical. And I think the thing that I love about Kundalini, it's called the Yoga of Awareness, it was brought to the West in the late 60s. And it was initially considered a Raj Yoga, like it was too potent for the average person. But they brought it to the West because people were going at that time, like to India, seeking gurus or doing a lot of drugs, seeking enlightenment and trying to find ways to connect. And Kundalini is really one of the most profound ways to connect, but it's the yoga of awareness. It's looking in rather than externally. You're not looking for a guru. And I think that's the most important thing about all of my practices I do. It's to empower you. This is not me standing here. It's like, hey, I found this. I just want to share this secret, because you actually have it all that's inside. So the yoga of awareness, what it does, it combines, like we always start off by tuning in. So you open up a connection to the divine, again, not a religious practice. So it's whatever works for you, God, goddess, galactic center, whatever feels good, but you're opening up your heart, you're opening up your intuition, and you're allowing yourself to create a flow to wisdom that is greater than you, but also you honor all of the wisdom in your own heart. And then we come into a pranayama just to get centered. So always starting with some breath work, just to kind of arrive and land and be present, because there's so much going on in the world. I feel like even if you're not a super empath, we're all picking up stuff that's out in the ethers, and you want to kind of come into that like personal cocoon. Kundalini energy, then we move into movement. Kundalini energy is seen as the inherent Shakti, like divine feminine Shakti energy in men and women, and it's meant to reside in the pelvic floor in the second and third vertebra. And so the movements that we do in Kundalini using mudra and bandhas, so locks and finger positioning, is to activate this Kundalini. And the belief is when you're born, if you don't have a traumatic birth, you're really in flow. And we know, I'm sure you from channeling, young children, like they're still connected before we kind of, get it out of them. And so we're in this beautiful flow. And over the course of our lifetime, emotional, physical blocks, like I had in my back clearly, really get us out of flow. And our energy centers get out of alignment. And so the process of Kundalini, working through the movements in the breath, is to activate and clear and cleanse the energy centers and to get you back into flow. So it's your energy clearing out what's within. Why? So that we can radiate out. Again, if we can become the light, if we can come into our truth and flow, then we can radiate out. And the gong is used for Shavasana. So we're not thinking about our to-do list. We're integrating, we're healing all of the efforts. And then we chant. And we don't always chant. I always chant just because I love it. It's like, if you're going to church, why in church is the choir singing? Your voice is the most healing frequency available. I can play the gong for you all day, but until you use your own voice, like that's the magic. And the way the tongue hits the nadis on the roof of the mouth, it creates, serotonin, dopamine release. And so you feel connected, and it's really like bringing you into your connection with the divine in a very beautiful way. So the whole thing, it's kind of mind, body, and spirit. And that's what I love. Like, that's really like the power of that practice is, you walk away and it's not just, oh, I got a good workout. It's like, oh, okay, I've come back into alignment.
So wonderful. Beautiful. So what is it exactly you're chanting?
Oh, so now in Vinyasa practice, they usually chant Sanskrit mantras. We chant Gurmukhi. It's a combination of like Sanskrit and Arabic. But so I chant different mantras for every class, I'll pick a different mantra. So the classes, there's 9,000 different sets in Kundalini. So the cool thing is too, there's no muscle memory. Nobody's ever going to be better than you in class because everybody's doing it for the first time. And then the mantras are all designed to work with what we've just practiced to elevate. So the mantras are always unique, and we repeat some of them obviously, but they're pretty unique and they're used for different purposes.
So you left Europe, you head back home, right? So you were talking about how sound healing wasn't something that was available where you now brought your life to. So, you walk into a room with a gong and there's all these people who don't know about sound healing. What was that kind of experience?
I'll tell you a funny story about the turban that ties this all together. So when I was coming home, I'd been in London, and I make this decision like, oh my gosh, I'm really going to do this. I'm going to start my business. And, maybe we talk later, like that's one heck of a leap of faith. Just even, the culture we've been brought up with, money is the success, to say, oh, okay, I'm going to really take a chance on all of this and really shift my life. And I came home to South Carolina because that's where my parents lived. And I thought, oh, Jesse, I was like, I'm going to go move to Costa Rica. That's where everything's happening, or do something like that. And I got here, and, no one was teaching Kundalini. There was not sound healing. I think there'd been one lady who had a gong like 10 years ago. And nobody, I would say cacao, and they're like, what are you talking about? And now, especially my father. So my mom, I was like, oh, I'll do just a free event at your gym. And so my mom made this cute flyer for me with my turban on and everything. And it was like Candace Blair, Kundalini and mantra. And my dad comes up to me and he goes, do you think when you have the turban on, do you have to use the last name? Do we have to put the Blair on it? So like even my father, who now is my greatest supporter and loves a gong bath, it was, coming here, like I feel like sometimes we're called to places that are more challenging. I believe that now. And it's like, okay, coming in here, and then it's taken me a good 5 years, Jesse, to like now, like I've trained so many sound healers here. Now there's probably like on this small island, there's probably like at least five amazing sound healers. So per capita, we have spread the word, but I think, it takes, you have to kind of come in and be like, all right, we're going to try this. And I had a couple of people, the owner of a local studio here, this was totally out of her realm. And she was like, yes, come and do this. And it's just finding one or two people who believe in you and will give you a chance. And I think then if you're doing it authentically, if you're doing it from the heart, and it's not a gimmick and it's not a thing, and people realize that very quickly, then it does spread. And it's not always been easy. I still, after 8 years, I'd love to have 50 people in my class. I don't, but I have people who are committed, and when they find it and they love it, and that's good for me, so I think it's coming, the transition that I made in the past like 6 years has been also that growth of making the decision, but then coming into like, okay, this is my truth and I'm not going to be swayed. And this is what I love to do. And I just want to share it in whatever way that it can be received.
So that conviction that you have, right? Like how, from the moment you first had that first Kundalini awakening experience, or whether you call it the Kundalini time, right? There in London, right? Where you had that moment to coming to a space of conviction, to taking that leap of faith. You said it took about 5 years before you quit your job and stuff like that. And there was obviously developments and you explored further and stuff. But can you recall moments of doubt and fear in those 5 years when you're coming to have that decision be made through you?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any time like we take that leap of faith, I think there has to be fear. I still get nervous. And I think that's because well, I mean, now it's more like, oh, I just really want to offer these people an experience. But personally, I was by making this decision completely negating everything that I'd been brought up to believe in a way about what success was, the busy calendar. Like, I mean, I had to not only make the decision, a very significant monetary decision, like, oh, and I'm going to go and I'll start this business. And I'll tell you, my initial expectations of what was possible, everything got shifted and changed. I ended up living in South Carolina. But I think the fear is like, that's also an evolution. It's like, okay, I have to change my relationship with money. I have to change my perspective. What is abundance? And the most important thing that I've had to do is I have had to just really learn to trust and have faith. And what I find so interesting about that is it's kind of, you have to do it once and take the step and let the path be lit. And inevitably you will take a few steps back, because it's almost like you can't believe that you can't believe that you are so divinely guided. At first you're like, I can't believe that I'm going to have this support. And you really do. Fear gets in. We were born into this society, kind of birthed into a society that's based on fear. And I think as you start raising your consciousness and as you start coming into love, the biggest challenge we have is to trust it in a world that really structurally has not been set up the way that we want to live or the way we want to teach people to live. So you're having to break through familial barriers, structural, societal barriers, and that requires a whole lot of faith. And it also requires an amazing community of people to believe in you. I think that, if I didn't have people who supported me along the way, this would have been so much harder. But, even, now, I mean, I still go through periods of doubt, but that's really when I'm like, okay, wait, I know that I will be guided and I know that I can trust. And I think it just gets easier and easier, and the lessons come faster, the more that you can tap into that faith. And that if I live my truth, if I really live from my heart, it's going to be okay. And I've, a variety of ways that I've tapped in. That is continually the message. Be authentic, live your truth. And if you do that and you do that in love, it really will be okay. So I just I think that's such an important message for people.
Also, what you said about having people support you, that's a sticking point for a lot of people at the beginning of their journeys, because they're like, well, yeah, that's great. Like, I get that I need people to support me, but I just don't have that right now in my in the life I'm living, my mainstream life. I don't have people who are like, have faith in my ability to go and take these courses, or to go and, to start my channeling or whatever it is. Right. But, what I want to just ask you is, do you find that the people would turn up along the way and it was almost like they were sent to you as you went along, or it's just you had this amazing community at the beginning and they were like, yeah, whatever you want to do, we support you? I mean, it even sounds like your dad at first was kind of like, I don't know.
He did not get the turban and the gong for a while. No, oh my gosh, when I got here, I didn't know anyone. And I had my, I went from a position of being so independent, and for a couple of months I even lived with my parents because I wasn't sure I was going to stay here. And I was like, okay, so when I started, what was interesting is I started teaching. It's kind of an interesting story on boundaries as well, is you start teaching. And the thing is, as much as you want to be out of the ego, you want people to like what you're doing, right? And you also want friends and community. And so I think it takes a while to be discerning about, like, okay, one, this is not about me like making friends, because I was told by an amazing channeler that's the greatest way to not hold space. Like, if you need something from the people you're creating space for, the work that you're doing, that's like the last limitation. But I think also it's finding a way to discern, like, okay, these are my students, and really starting to be discerning about who do I really want in my circle. And I mean, it's really, I would say in the past year, it's taken me like 5 years. Like, I now have this really beautiful community, and different teachers have come to me along the way that have really supported me, and mentors. And I think you just, you sometimes it's lonely, but I think again, you have to have faith. And when you do get people who support you, nourish that. And I would say to anyone who's got a strong community, and like has that bravery and that truth, God, share it with people. Like, I really try and do as many like women's groups and open houses for people to come in and just meet each other. And it's not about meeting me. Like, I don't, if Kundalini doesn't resonate, if sound doesn't resonate, alchemy, cacao, well, I've got 20 people doing something different that you might want to meet. And I think it brings me just to one topic I like to raise, because I'm so over spiritual hierarchy. I think the time is now for everybody to support one another. Like, we are at this, whether you think it's like devolution, evolution, like we are being called together to support one another. And I would say, if people are coming in and saying, oh, you have to follow me, this is the way to do it, I would run a million miles away. But I feel like, you're in the right place when somebody says, hey, this is what I do, but let me introduce you to my pals who do this. Feel into your heart, find, and because I think when it resonates, then you're like, okay, I can do this, but with people who really support you, not that are going to tell you what to do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been in situations where people have been like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, don't talk about your channeling. Like, don't mention what you do." And I'm like, "What?" Yeah, because it's not about you, Jess. And I'm like, "No, but it's not about anything. Like, if I can't mention what I do, then I don't understand. Like, should I not mention that I have a family either, or like not talk about my cat? Like, which things am I allowed to talk about? Which things am I not allowed to? So yes, absolutely red flaggy, and boundaries are huge. Boundaries are absolutely huge. I want to know more from you about cacao, and because we were talking a little bit about, having that open heart, remaining authentic. And, I know that cacao is one of these medicines that can help with that has been, I mean, it's ancient, the Aztecs, the Mayans. And if you can just tell us a little bit about the background, how you came to use it, and also like sell me on sell me on using it, because I'm curious, and I had a bunch here. But it was funny, I bought this big block, right, like off a Peruvian. I had it shipped and everything. It was gorgeous, so nice. And like, I don't know, I couldn't find the ceremonialness in myself for it. So it was like, yeah, a nice drink I'd have in the evening, maybe. But I got lazy about it. And by the, like one of these things that you go, oh, now, is it even good anymore? Like, so it was a bit of a waste of my experience. But I want to know, what is the parts that I'm missing? Because obviously it's not just the drink that you're enjoying. There's something to it that that I didn't quite get yet.
Yeah. So when I think about like some of my foundations, so I did the Kundalini, right? And I got the experience with the gong, and then I go to the cacao ceremony. And I ended up training with the woman who was the first woman. She's a shaman from London, and she works with a variety of different plant medicines. What really connected me with cacao? So cacao, as you said, Mayans and the Aztecs, they revered it so much that they actually used it as currency because of the amazing health benefits, and also because it creates a bit of a euphoric feeling in the body. And just to talk through that really quickly. So cacao is the purest form of chocolate. So whatever you find in the store, even if it says like 99%, it's in a bar, it's been manufactured. Like, typically things are added, things are removed. When you're getting a block of cacao, it is literally like the colorful pods, the beans come in this beautiful kind of sweet white coating. The beans are extremely bitter, like definitely not our Hershey's, that's for sure. And they're allowed to ferment, then they're roasted, and then they're ground into a paste. And that is like 100% cacao. Now, ceremonial cacao, the differentiation, it's like kind of cooked carrots and organic raw carrots, right? Like we're talking about a vibration. So cacao for me was the first time I'd been introduced to a plant having a vibration. Like I didn't, all of these things were new. So when we have ceremonial cacao, it means it's never been brought above a boiling point. It's actually carrying still the way that it's been planted and brought to you has been done in a ceremonial way, in a very conscientious way. And like the cacao that I use, Keith's cacao, I've sat on Keith's porch in Guatemala many times. He's been working on bringing cacao back into Western consciousness for like the past 30 years. And he works with indigenous farmers. And so you're getting a product that is carrying a vibration, because you can put cacao in like, your smoothies at the place. It's great for you. I mean, it's a superfood, but ceremonial cacao is carrying the vibration. So for me, first introduction to a plant having a vibration, also to the concept of plant medicine. Now, this has become such a buzzword now, and we hear so much about, ayahuasca and psilocybin and all these other amazing plant medicines and people that are having wonderful experiences. But cacao for me was so wonderful because it's so gentle. It's not a psychotropic. It's a beautiful heart opener that helps you to connect to a plant vibration. And they say particularly, it opens the heart and helps you to let go of blocks. So we come back to the theme again, like all of the things I do are about energy and blocks, from the Kundalini, the Gong, and the cacao. And cacao for me, when I did my first ceremony, I was like, oh, okay, this is coming into my being a vibration. I'm bringing this vibration of this divine feminine goddess like into my being, and I'm connecting to the wisdom of the plant. Now, I combine sound with cacao because I love the concept of vibrating inside, vibrating outside, and using all of the tools. But when we think about what does it do, like scientifically, like if you go to the US FDA thing, it's like #1 on the antioxidant scale, better than goji berries. It's got tons of magnesium and iron. And Theobroma cacao, and it's a criollo bean, like it's never been genetically modified. It's the same the Mayans and the Aztecs used. Theobromine is released when you drink it. Now that gives you mental clarity and focus, but it also induces the release of serotonin and dopamine. So it's a natural mood enhancer. Releases anandamide, which is the bliss molecule you get often from doing yoga or exercise. It also releases the molecule associated with love. I always forget that one. I should really remember the name of it. But what is it?
Oxytocin?
Yeah.
Baby, when you fall in with your baby, or that one?
Yes. I don't know that it's that. But yes. When you're reading, it's like yes. and it increases rather than like coffee, because a lot of people use cacao, like myself, as a replacement for coffee or a substitute, a healthier substitute, because coffee, well, that hits your nervous system. Cacao affects your cardiovascular system and brings about 10 to 15% more blood flow to the brain. So the combination of this awaken, like this clarity, and then this kind of euphoric bliss is a potent combination for a sound healing, certainly, because you're like, okay, I'm taking it all in, and for guided meditation. So when I lead cacao ceremonies, and I do that monthly, like I lead quite a bit of cacao ceremonies, it's about coming into communion and sitting in circle, sharing the cacao, connecting to the plant, connect to the vibration, bring the vibration in with intention, and then laying back and being able to receive and be taken on a guided journey, whether it's a shamanic journey with drums or sound healing journey. And so I use it that way ceremonially, but then, on a daily basis for me, part of the practice of connecting, I used to sit in front of 5 screens and I'd really lost my connection to the planet. And they say cacao comes into our consciousness when we're out of touch with our hearts and we're out of touch with Pachamama. So that is where we are, I would say. Like, we have forgotten about this vibration on the planet and we're really trying to come back into love. So what a beautiful to make it a part of your morning meditation. Like, I'm going to bring this in, I'm going to set an intention, I'm going to feel into this vibration on this planet, and taking that into your journaling. It's wonderful for creative writing or dancing and movement. So there's so many different ways that you can utilize it. And just so you know, all cacao ceremonies are different. It's not a copying of a tradition. It's people using this beautiful plant and enhancing what they do and what they bring to it. So it's pretty cool, because you can get quite creative with it.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you have sold me on it, by the way, because I was just thinking about my morning routine and how, like, I come down, I have my couple minutes alone while I'm brewing my coffee and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure the coffee's not entirely not an addiction at this point. So, so I'm thinking, if I could have something that has all those antioxidants, that has all that heart opening goodness, that's going to stimulate all of that stuff, and simply just swap things out. I'm very good at, like at just making a decision, then swapping things out. So now I have to source some organic ceremonial cacao here in Milan, which might be a little bit difficult, but I'm sure I'll be able to figure it out.
Tell me afterwards. There are so many beautiful practitioners in Italy.
Okay, great. So definitely we'll talk about that afterwards, and anyone who wants information on that too can get in touch with you. I'm assuming and get in touch with you about having a ceremony or.
Yeah, so yeah, on my website you can purchase cacao. There's so much about the history, and then like I do a monthly global ceremony, so it's virtual, and because I lived in Europe, so half of my clientele is European as well. So it's really nice to to kind of bring everybody all together.
Oh, that sounds absolutely lovely. Wonderful. So my next question would be like, there's lots of people who are listening to the show. I know this for a fact from my community and stuff, that first of all are looking for spiritual community. Everybody's looking for that friend or that partner or that someone who gets them. We have the internet, so we're so blessed to be able to connect in this way that we wouldn't have otherwise. But people do still feel quite isolated and alone. And I know you put together like a spiritual community. So can you tell us a little bit about the Soulfire social community that you have?
Absolutely. So what I try and do is, like, my friends all call me like the conscious connector, right? So there tends to be a couple of different people. I feel like that's what you do with your podcast, right? Like, you're bringing in people of all different backgrounds and introducing them to one another. So it's interesting because not everybody wants to do yoga, right? So I have like my Kundalini community. One thing I love about sound is one of the easiest ways to bring people in and remind them that it's okay to just receive, right? Like, you don't have to really do anything but come in, lay down, and receive. And the cacao definitely is kind of when it's almost like those warm people up to kind of really come into ceremony. And so what I do is try and bring people from all of those different groups together. And I have a thing where I have these women's meetings, and we just had one the other day, and like bringing everyone in. Sometimes we'll have like a specific theme that we want to discuss, but sometimes it's just a matter of giving people an opportunity to come in. Like, we just did like a 3-hour potluck where people could just come, they could bring their kids, they could do whatever, and just giving people a space to talk, just to talk and share. And I think, where nothing's too woo-woo, like, right? Like, we can talk about everything. And I would say in particular, I teach a methodology called the alchemy of becoming, and that has become a super tight group because everyone is like on this path, really committed to raising consciousness, and really not just for themselves, but for family and humanity. But I think the key for me in those communities and in creating that, Jesse, is that I remember exactly where I was in 2012. And so the one thing just I remind everyone is, like, I want to invite everybody. Like, I want if whether it's you've just been to a Kundalini class, or you just heard the gong for the first time, to be able to come, to have everyone really just be open and and whatever, not where there's no hierarchy, right? So again, that word, like bringing people in. And I think the most important thing we can do is foster communities so that people aren't intimidated. Because I remember, I was like the oldest person in my Kundalini training, and I didn't know what anything was. And there were a few people, who kind of, bypassed me, but there were also a couple of people who were like, hey, we'll show you the way. And, that touched me. And so I think the most important thing about creating these communities is just making sure that everyone feels welcome, and that we, kind of bring as many people along for the ride as well.
Yeah, well, it is a numbers game. It does answer my question, and it's totally a numbers game, because at the end of the day, we're all literally in this together. Like, it's not like I'm on a different planet than you, or even the person I, have the most conflict with is somewhere else. We're really in this together, and consciousness is all one. So when we're having that openness and that acceptance and that curiosity for other, where are they from? What can I learn from them? What can, I offer them if I have something to give, is so beautiful and needed. And it's not about, this community or that community. It's about the community, because we all are. And Vagrein calls it common unity. It's the common acknowledgement of unity that brings people together, because it doesn't matter what you're united in. So any community, like even if it's a woodworking meetup once a week because everyone likes whittling or whatever it is, then they have the common unity of, oh, we all like this thing. So I think now what's happening is community is becoming like, well, we're all human. And even beyond that, we're all beings, or we're all consciousness, or we're all, light pretending to be something else, right? So that's our unity and where we're going. So for people who haven't taken that first step yet, like let's say all the closeted woo people who have stumbled upon this podcast, who are like, well, I'm not gonna, I can't out myself by admitting to my interest in these topics. I don't know what my next step is. I feel alone. What advice would you give to them? Anyone who's having that trouble like you were having with your back pain, or, anywhere on that journey?
Well, I think it's making sure that it really is reaching out, find someone or something that you connect with, even if it's outside of your circle, whether it's something like on a podcast. Like I have a friend who really has been working on channeling and taking courses, and is so, like, her husband passed, and she's she's like, I really want to connect, and she really can't tell anyone, and making sure, or trying to find someone that you can trust, that you can share with that. And that's, even if you're joining a course, no, there are going to be people like you on it. So finding something that sets your heart on fire. And I do say, like, you kind of have to, take the first step, find the courage to just take the first step. And, I think if you look around, there's so many of us who are saying that, like, there is a point where I feel the time is now to empower yourself. And so if you're watching and you're afraid, like, do it. But, I can't, so much of the teachings and the way that I believe, like, what the message I want to give is, you really have so much more inside of you, so much more potential, so much more possibility. And just like, you just have to believe, and it's just that one step. And so it's finding a teaching, finding something that allows you to find that strength to make the first step, to make the first connection. And so, I always think, like, just tuning into your heart and being like, okay, what makes my heart sing? Then just following that first step, and then having the courage to just reach out a bit. You don't have to, I remember I didn't want to tell my parents I went to a gong bath, because I thought they would think I was doing something really weird and wacky. I was like, how can I explain a gong bath? So it's slow. And, I said, my family now really supports me, but it's an evolution. But I think if you have one person, and even I think you're going to be speaking with Karen and Dan, like, who wrote The Alchemy of Becoming, Diane, who was channeling, like, she didn't know who to tell for a while. And so many people I know who have come into, their zone of genius, were like, what is is this weird? Is this, like, who can I share it with? And when they found that one person, they felt supported and connected. But you have to find the courage to take that first step. And so I think that is, oh, sorry, my leg got tired. That is really the most important thing, is you've got to really tune into your inner courage. So finding a way to get brave, because the world needs you. Like, and I will say, Jesse, if there's one thing about the way I teach, it's, I'm not going to ever be the person that's going to sit in front of you really quiet and like, like, I have other teachers for that. I think we're being called now to take the step and to transform. And it's in the way that I play, it's in the way that I teach, and it's in the way that I do ceremony. It is on each of us to find that power. And I just think that we don't have a lot of time to waste. So it's like, wake up.
Yeah, let's get going. Let's get going. And I totally resonate with that. When I first started channeling, one of the first transmissions that came through with Vagrein was like, they said, don't worry, like your ground crew is in formation. You're just going to bump into them. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up going on this holiday / retreat, like hangouts in a spiritual community. And I didn't know the people who were actually there. And they were talking about channeling and the channelers that they like for 3 days before I was like, hey guys, I think I might be channeling. I'm not sure what's going on, And then that's, that their openness to that is what allowed me then to go, okay, this thing that I'm doing is not for me. It's for everyone. It has nothing to do with me. And, allowing myself to go, okay, really, it is my responsibility to take on this challenge, gift, invitation, whatever you want to call it, when you have things that you can offer. If I have an offering, it's for me to offer. Like, that's my job. I have to do this because it's my job.
Right. Yeah. It is. And it's finding your purpose. And, sometimes we think we have a purpose and then it can shift dramatically. I think one of the most important things is, our truth today is not our truth tomorrow. Like, we have to become a little bit more flexible and a little bit more malleable to ideas and concepts. Because we certainly know, as we start to kind of move in the space, like, oh my gosh, like there's so much amazing stuff that's out in the field. And it's just really allowing yourself to be open to that. And I love what you said. Like, you kind of slowly, like you kind of come, it's like you come out of the spiritual closet, right? You're like, okay. And you get so excited to find your playmates.
That's right. Yeah. And hang out for a bit and have them go, yeah, this is cool. I've seen, and also just normalize it. I mean, anyone who's listening to this show, if you're cautious about these types of things, or if you're a little bit, apprehensive, like even just leaving a comment on this can be a first step, because then someone else comments on your comment and then you see you're not alone, that the thing you're thinking isn't weird, that the way you're expressing isn't, shunned or different or odd or whatever. And it's really just a question of being also very compassionate with yourself as you take your time to get into a space of being comfortable.
Absolutely. And like, I mean, I would just say, and I would imagine most of the people you have on here, like I always tell people, not many people take me up on it, but I'm like, I always tell people in ceremony, I'm like, if you have a question, just like write me. Like, this has been the most exciting journey of my life. Like, I will, I'll spend all day where, be like, oh my gosh, like, please let me tell you about it. Like, you want people to ask. And it's funny because I think, maybe that's a great reminder. Like, most people who are doing this are so excited to share it and so want to answer questions. I mean, really, that's the case for me. Like, when I get someone reach out and say, hey, your class touched me, or can you talk to me about why I felt maybe a little scared during the gong, or I really felt connected. And when you were playing the bowls, I mean, it means the world to me. And to open up that connection, and maybe then we can open up avenues of something, near you or might be interesting. But I think trust that people who are doing this want to help. Like, you find your purpose too, like, that's the point. As you said, this is that's really all I want to do, is to teach and give people tools to really to find their purpose and to find, to get back into that place of love.
That's beautiful. So let us know what project is you're most excited about right now and where people can find you.
Sure. So, I mean, I think it's taken me the 5 years of the business to finally kind of get this part up and running. And my love of travel, it was, I think finally now it's being able to bring people together on retreats. Like, I love, I really love my classes and the ceremonies, but to be able to take people out of their everyday lives and to bring them into a space, when I do my retreats for like it's 6-7 days. Like, so I find most people, it takes them 2 or 3 days just to turn off, but to kind of come into an environment where you're with other people, like you said, so you were on this retreat, right? That's where you met to create a safe environment that allows people to, whether it's being in nature or a new cultural experience. Like we did one in Guatemala that was just, it was so fantastic on a Lago Atitlan. And, we're doing cacao where the mines were, it was just beautiful. And like, we're going to Puerto Rico, to the Dominican Republic. And it's like all about living in a jungle, in a tree house, so it's creating these experiences where people can get out of their everyday lives and really open up to the possibility and potential and meet other people, not just me, but meet other people that they can share with and learn from. And so that is something I really love doing. But I have, up and coming, I always have once a month the virtual global cacao ceremonies. And, if you're not here, if you put in the earbuds and create a sacred space at home and you have some cacao, I tell you what, it's really pretty cool. And you do feel like you're really a part of the experience. Like the community has grown a lot. I do, virtual and like virtual live Kundalini classes 3 times a week. And I do some virtual sound healings, but I love to do those in person. So those are just kind of off the cuff on like Facebook or Instagram, where I'll just be like, hey, I'm coming on live when I've got everything set up. But yeah, if you go to my website, I think like I'm super proud of it, Jesse, because it can be a little like you'll see it, but it's like if you are interested in cacao, I really tried to give like, okay, hey, listen, this is the history. This is what we're doing. Same with sound healing. This is what a gong does. This is what I'm using. And, Kundalini, the history and why do I wear a turban? Why am I in white? And I try to really let it go as deep as you want to go. And if you just want to link to a Zoom, that's perfect. It's easy to find. But if anything here has really like caught your interest, you can go there and do a little bit more of a deep dive. And that's everything's under soulfiresocial.com. And I have a YouTube channel with like over 200 free classes, 50 meditations, and there's some sound healing. So if you just kind of want to get a feeling, and then just reach out. I do a lot of private work as well. So thank you for the platform to share that. I appreciate it.
So what's the YouTube channel in case anyone wants to head over to
YouTube is Soulfire Social as well. So my website is soulfiresocial.com. If you go to YouTube and you type in Soulfire Social, it'll come up and it'll be classes, meditations, sound healings, and you can just pop in some earbuds and have a listen as well.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Of course, it's going to be in the show notes as well in case anyone wants to directly click that. And, you have such a wealth of expertise in a lot of these areas. You're doing a lot, you're sharing a lot, you're giving a lot. What would you leave our listeners with if there was like one message you want to share with the world right now? Oh, no, first I have another question. You think about that one, but I have another question for you. What does the word mystic mean for you?
Oh, that's a great question. It's funny. So I think like to the end, like the mysterious, I think kind of like mystic, mysterious, but what comes to me when I'm thinking about mystic is like, it's kind of like the fog and the shade. Like when I like the mystery, the mist, the mystic, right? And I think the mystic before was almost untouchable. It was like, oh, okay, this is mystic. And I feel like right now the veils are thinning, and it's like we're able to connect with the mystic. It's almost it's all these wonderful mysteries of the universe that we can tap into, and all of this wisdom and knowledge, and not a person as a mystic, but almost the field as the mystery. But that it's really no longer such a mystery. We're sharing. Like I love, like you're channeling. I do a lot of work with shamans. I learn from them. Like there's so many amazing, mysterious, mystical practices, but we're actually able to find all the tools that work for us. So tap into the mystic, don't let it be a mystery to you anymore, because it is awesome. Like once you really open your mind to all of the potential ideas and tools I mean, it's really, it's wonderful.
Beautiful. I love that description. And the other question is, if you were sharing this information, sharing something right now to all of humanity, what is it that you would want to share if you could say one thing?
Find your purpose, live your truth. I mean, it really actually would just be empower yourself, because it's not out there, it's right here. And if you do this, if you do that, if you take the time to heal this and come into alignment, that is what is going to be the game changer. So if enough of us can come into that flow and into that light, we just, and I know that's not one word, but you, by healing yourself, we give so much away, and we give so much of our power away, and we look to others, and I think, we give and we give. Come back in here and get this right, because that's what's going to radiate out. That first is going to affect your family and friends, that then is going to go into your community, and then lights up humanity. And so, yeah, come back, empower yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Candace, for coming on to Some Kind of Mystic and for sharing all of your gifts and wisdom with us today. And, I hope anyone who's out there who's an investment broker who's like, should I go or should I stay, decides and is inspired by your story and sees the light shining through you and the joy that you have now, and feels a bit more empowered in themselves to be who they are as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
For having me. I mean, it's such an honor, and thank you all for listening. And please do reach out with those questions if you have them. I really mean it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. If you're hearing this message, you've listened all the way to the end of this episode, and for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's people just like you that keep me motivated to bring you more and more enlightened content to the world. If you have any questions about the things we covered in the show, or would like to follow my projects, please find me on www.jpherman.com. I answer all my messages, so don't hesitate to reach out. You can also find me on Instagram, and the details are in the show notes.
So when I was first doing all of this and working on the trading floor, and you have to imagine, just rows and rows of men and screens and everything. And I have this one video, my team had just they knew that I was leaving, and they had just bought me this gong as my going away present. And so what I would do is I would literally, at the end of the day, all of these guys in their suits would go and they'd set their shoes by the side of the thing, and I would practice on them to see how they went. So I have video, literally, you can see the closing bell in the background, and I have all these men in their suits lying down, and I'm swinging the gong over them. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna try it with chanting now. And they are all trying to be serious, trying not to giggle, but it was one of the most empowering things I'd ever experienced. And then one of my clients said to me, okay, I want you to come do this for your last meeting. And I would come in the pinstripe suit and the heels. And so he's like, I want you to come in, and I want you to I'm going to bring in all the young assistants and the researchers, and that really don't know you. And he's like, I want you to really knock their socks off with this presentation of your stock picks. He goes, then I want you to tell them to close their eyes, and I want you to play the gong. And so literally I've got this boardroom filled with all of these kind of young, just super dynamos. And I gave them their thing, and I'm like, and now I'd like you all to close your eyes. And so they all close their eyes, and I walk around the back gonging them. And I can say, I don't think that's probably ever been done ever on trading floors in London ever. And it's one of my favorite memories of, also, even if you don't think people are going to accept what you do in your field, you never know. You never know how they might surprise you.